Coming up on this edition of This is Jersey, we have James Fiorentino, a nationally renowned artist, here to talk about his baseball art, his memorabilia, and some of his wildlife. We'll be back right after this.
Are you ready for some Jersey? Well, we've got Jersey. The zipper was made here. The light bulb was made here. The color television calls the Garden State home. Everybody wants to know about New Jersey. Sandy beaches, beautiful cities. We even have the Jersey Turnpike. Inventors, music, the movies. You need an exit? We got them too. You want Jersey? This is Jersey.
Today on This is Jersey, we're visiting the art studio and gallery of New Jersey's own James Fiorentino. James is an acclaimed painter and illustrator who is best known for his sports-related artwork, specifically the paintings of baseball players. A player himself for Drew University, James's work has been noted for its depiction of the true sweat and grit of the game, and his portfolio is filled with some of baseball's biggest names, including Yogi Berra, Cal Ripken Jr., and Derek Jeter, just to name a few. His style and technique of watercolor painting is praised as wholly original, and he's been commissioned as an official artist for Major League sports and players since he was a teenager. His work is featured at some of the most prestigious sports institutions worldwide, and on dozens of baseball and sports cards. In addition to sports art, James also enjoys creating everyday life images, nature and wildlife paintings, and more recently, neo-expressionist paintings. Today, James gives us a look into his beautiful world of art and sports. So James, how did this all start for you?
You know, it started when I was really young, painting and drawing when I was a little kid. And, you know, like I said, most kids love to draw and paint, and same for me since I was 3-4 years old. In fact, my mom showed a picture I had done when I was like 3 or 4 to the pediatrician. He said, wow, he's got really good hand-eye coordination. So it was something I think was born within me, obviously encouraged by my parents. But, you know, by the time I was 8 years old, I was already starting to take private lessons. So I was drawing everything that I loved at 6 and 7 and 8, developed my skill, and just fell in love with watercolor. So really from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, all at that young age, I was doing a lot of artwork. And by the time I was probably 12, 13 years old, when I started doing a lot of sports art, and it really started to evolve, and obviously the Baseball Hall of Fame, which a lot of people know about. I had a painting in the Hall of Fame at 15 and became the youngest artist. The year before, I met the great Joe DiMaggio, had him sign a painting, and this is all around, you know, 13, 14, 15 years old. So my career was really starting to take off, and I think obviously starting at such a young age, starting at 8, taking lessons was a big help for my career.
Did you ever get in trouble taking or drawing pictures in school?
I never got in trouble drawing pictures in school, but it's funny, now I see like teachers from years ago when I was little, like kindergarten teachers, and they kept all my artwork. And so I guess they obviously saw how advanced I was at that young age, thinking that I was going to be an artist down the road, and they kept a lot of my stuff. But I do remember my mom saying if we went somewhere, I would have to grab my sketch pad or a coloring book and always be doing something with art.
I know you have a fondness for the Yankees. Tell me about your connection.
Grew up a Yankee fan, certainly passed on to me the Yankee tradition. Being a 14-year-old kid and meeting the great Joe DiMaggio was unbelievable, but I always had, I was telling somebody recently, I've always had this passion for the historical aspect of baseball. Tradition, the older guys. I was more into guys I had never seen before, like Babe Ruth, like Joe DiMaggio. So to meet DiMaggio at 14, and he said, oh, I love your painting, and I met him a few times, and he wanted to do a project with me, was like unbelievable. And then through the years, you know, meeting Mickey Mantle and the great Yogi Berra, who I became friends with, guys like Phil Rizzuto, to Mattingly, to obviously guys like Jeter. And all these different players over the years, Mariano Rivera. And so, you know, being able to paint pictures of them, paint for them, for their events, you know, I get to develop these relationships. So as a fan, it is pretty cool to have that opportunity.
How was it like for you as a young kid going to school and then after school doing all these great things with the great baseball players?
It was definitely unusual and unique for, you know, peers to see me, especially I was doing a lot of TV stuff too at that time, and my work was starting to get showcased all around the country in newspapers, magazines, and was always very fortunate enough to be able to get on a lot of those TV shows. So, so to go to school and be a regular kid and, you know, playing sports and playing baseball, and then to go home to paint and do all these special projects was really amazing. I probably at the time wasn't really processing it all, but to think back to say, wow, I was painting Cal Ripken Jr.'s official artwork when he broke the streak. I painted Ted Williams' 20 greatest hitters that he had chosen for his museum. And I'm doing all this, I think that was a junior year of high school. And so to be thinking of doing all these projects in my parents' house and going to school like every other kid, I think my story has always been intriguing for people. I mean, I paint in watercolor, and the way my style of watercolor is very unique. So a lot of people have always said there's a lot of soul in your paintings. And obviously my paintings go well beyond sports, with painting everyday life and presidential, all types of people. But a lot of people have always said they see that grit and that sweat in the athletes. And I think a lot of players also like the fact that I played baseball, I played sports, especially baseball. I played in baseball, played at university, so I have a passion for the game. And I think knowing sports and knowing the game certainly, may help in the way of painting that. But I think like in any business, and especially art, people have to like you as a person as well. I've had clients who have bought my work for the last 20 years, and I think that's not only because they like my work, but they like me as a person.
And I see behind you have a Yogi Berra collection. Tell me about that piece.
This painting meant a lot to me. I painted this original Yogi last year, 2015, and I've probably painted, I bet you, close to 20 originals of Yogi over the years. But this painting meant a lot because this was done after Yogi had passed away, and we wanted to think of a way to capture his life and how incredible he was as a ball player, of course all that he had done outside of baseball. And I had this original painting along with 20 other Yankee paintings I had done that were all showcased at the Yogi Berra Museum. And I've felt so honored to have my work at the museum. I've had a couple solo shows there. So to have this big collage of Yogi that I had done, and it was so meaningful a month after Yogi had passed away, really meant a lot to me.
And I see you have Derek Jeter here as well.
Yeah, one of the most popular players, as you can imagine, for me to paint is Derek Jeter. Especially Yankee players, but Derek, of course, being one of the most popular Yankees of all time, and happened to play in this wonderful era over the last 20 years of guys who've been collecting my work. And yeah, I've had the opportunity to meet Derek many times, and again, probably paint, over maybe 20, 30 originals on Derek over the years. Everything from when he first started out as a rookie, to when he retired, to his last hit at Yankee Stadium, which is one of my favorites. I did this huge painting of him. Literally getting that last hit, which was very magical and story-like, like his career. So yeah, to be able to depict him over the years and follow his career has been really great for my art.
Do you go to the games and create the image from that, or do you do it from pictures?
I create everything from pictures, but I do go to the games. I take my own images sometimes. I do get ideas in my head that I'll come home and sketch sometimes. You don't get a lot of time with these players because they're very busy, but I do get to meet them beforehand a lot of the times, and certainly if I'm lucky enough, I'll get images from them, or they'll tell me, hey James, I want to look in a certain way, or I like this image of me. So a lot does go into planning on doing an original painting, and especially now as I've gotten older, trying to figure out what's the most unique type of shot of some of these guys, something like you've never seen before, like the one we were looking at here of his back turn. It's just not your typical image you see of Derek.
So who was your big star when you were a kid?
Yeah, so I was in college by the time Derek started out, but Don Mattingly was definitely my Jeter of that time. And to me, Mattingly was like a god. Going to the games 84, 85, 86 when I was younger, and watching Don Mattingly was unbelievable. It was the start of really me wanting to collect and getting into baseball and playing in Little League. And one of the stories I like to tell people is, this guy's my hero growing up, and I had an opportunity to meet him many times, one of which I painted his actual retirement piece, which was on the cover of Yankee magazine. So to be able to have this guy as my hero and paint this image that was all over the stadium was unreal. And then later on, seeing him at the Ted Williams Museum, where I had painted him as a part of the Ted Williams program, he's being inducted, and he spots me and says, hey James, how you doing? I said, I couldn't believe it. I told my wife, I said, this is unreal. Don Mattingly is saying hi to me. And so that's the kind of stuff that just blows my mind even still today.
Tell us about the Ripken image.
Yeah, so after the Baseball Hall of Fame stuff and the Ted Williams artwork, I think having that sort of in my portfolio by the time I was 16, 17 years old was probably what really, allowed me to get this Cal Ripken Jr. job. It so happened that growing up in Middlesex, there was someone in that area that had the opportunity to have an artist paint this picture. And Ripken's people saw my artwork that I had previously done, and said he is the guy to do this. So I became the official artist of Ripken Breaking Gehrig Streak, which was unbelievable. And this was my senior year in high school. So at that time, I'm about to play baseball at Drew University, play college baseball. I'm doing all these projects. And when I got to do this historical event, which became really national news, it was so much beyond baseball and sports. It became this guy who was playing every day for this long amount of time. And ABC World News and Dick Schaap to CBS This Morning to New York Times, everybody started to do stories on me. And I think that's really where my career started taking off from a national perspective, and people contacting me from all around the country, and Ripken being the biggest one.
Interesting. You know, I have to take a break. When we come back, I want to continue to talk about your series and other things that you're doing. We'll do that when we come back. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to This is Jersey. We're continuing our conversation with James Fiorentino, who in addition to creating amazing works of art, is also an avid collector of sports memorabilia, as well as that of another favorite hobby, comic books. James, beyond your art, you've collected a lot of artifacts. Tell me about the things you have in this area of your gallery.
Yeah, you know, I've been very fortunate to collect a lot of cool things. You know, anytime I was going to paint an athlete, especially a baseball player, I'd bring like a baseball to have signed, and now I find myself collecting it for my children. But I've put together a really cool collection of a lot of signed memorabilia and really personal stuff that was given to me from players or clients, everything from an old Yankee Stadium seat to my great friend Pepper Davis, who some people may know. The movie A League of Their Own was based on her life as one of the players, and got a uniform from her that was made for the movie. Just really, really cool, amazing stuff. And I've always felt blessed and honored to get this stuff. And it's one of those things, even for me, I love giving stuff to people as well. It's just a really nice thing to do. But yeah, the collection has really been, and actually, speaking of collecting, it's probably why I originally started doing all the artwork. I thought to myself, how can I get something interesting that I could collect? And DiMaggio happened to be the first guy that I said, oh, I'll paint a picture. We'll paint a picture, have him sign it, and that's would be part of my collection. So, you know, I think it's always been in my blood to be a collector.
You mentioned Yankee seats. Yeah, you have multi-generations of seats. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I have seats from the 70s to the end of this particular stadium, the new stadium. But the coolest is by far the original seats going back to Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig time, where it actually had the green paint on it. So I feel like it's a piece of history in the house, and you know, the fact that I paint all these guys, to have something like that in here is pretty wild.
Now, there's one other piece that you have that was a part of the Yankee Stadium that was painted on the wall as a mural. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. You know, it was picked up by like the New York Times and a lot of different New York newspapers, but I was asked by a friend of mine through the New York Yankees to come and paint inside the old Yankee Stadium. And I remember it was during a doubleheader, really hot. I'm in this random room off the clubhouse. And that particular room was told to these guys years ago that Lou Gehrig would spend time in there. Lou Gehrig's wife had said this, that he would go away from the team, spend time in this room, and it was called the Gehrig Room. So they asked me to do a painting of him, and then eventually became a couple more other Yankee MVPs. And a lot of the Yankees, like Jeter, would go into this room and see my artwork. So it became sort of like a folk story within the stadium. And it's one of those weird things now. We don't know whatever happened to the artwork that was done on this column. Did it come down in the stadium? Did somebody chisel this thing out? You know, where'd it go? But kind of a cool story for me as a Yankee fan to have participated in that.
Now, you have a lot of signed baseballs here. Tell me who's here.
We've got a lot of Hall of Famers. That's always been my thing, obviously, meeting baseball Hall of Famers, and especially when I first met Ted Williams and all those guys. I remember bringing like 20 baseballs with me and just, you know, unloading guys and having them sign them. So it's everybody from Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio to current guys like a current Mike Piazza, who's going to be inducted this year, all the way back to a Ray Dandridge or a Lefty Gomez. So guys that had played back even into probably the 30s and 40s I have collected. And most of them, 90% of everything I have here I got in person. So it was all people I've met, and a lot of cool stories actually behind them.
James, beyond the art that you create, you collect other people's art. Tell me what you have here.
Yeah, you know, I'm a fan of all types of art, but I love comic book art, my Star Wars stuff down here, and a lot of these comic illustrators, to me, some of the best artists ever live. Guys going back to the 40s. You know, I've had a lot of great relationships with a lot of these older artists, and they've become friends of mine. And so in here, you'll see everything from Stan Lee signed stuff to my great friend Joe Sinnott, who's known as the greatest inker in comic history. And so we speak all the time about baseball, about art, and you can see this old definition of illustration that they still can do. And so I am a big fan of collecting other people's artwork, and especially if I know the artist too. It's a really nice thing to be able to trade my art for someone else's art. It's an honor.
I see you have an image of Hulk Hogan there. You met him?
Growing up, loved wrestling like every little kid does, especially in the 80s, and nobody bigger than the Hulkster. So I had the opportunity to meet him at an event, and I decided, yeah, I'm going to do this beautiful painting of him, but really this athletic pose of him really wrestling, showing what these guys can do, and he loved it. And not only did he love it so much, he said, I want to buy this painting. Stopped everything that was going on and said, I am buying this painting right now. So he did. He bought the original painting for his house, for his collection, which blew me away. You know, that doesn't often happen when I see these guys. And I had a reproduction from the original that he had signed to me, so something I could keep down here. Probably one of the coolest things I've ever done is, I think, painting for baseball cards. Because as a kid, that was my thing. I love collecting cards. That's all that I wanted to do. So to think one day that my artwork would be featured on trading cards was unbelievable to me. And in 1999, my first artwork appeared on Topps trading cards, which became very popular in the hobby. And then in 2001, I created cards for Upper Deck, which were called the Fiorentino collection. And I did every sport from basketball, baseball, hockey, football. And then I continued to do more cards for Upper Deck. And then most recently, within the last 5 years, I created cards for Kellogg. So, you know, to go in your local ShopRite and see your artwork on the cover of Cheez-Its and Club Crackers was pretty awesome. So I think trading cards have been probably one of the funnest things I've had the opportunity to do.
Now you have a lot of three-dimensional stuff here too. Have you ever gotten into that?
It's a good question. You know what? I really haven't. I've done a few completely separate from what you're showing today. I've done some modern paintings and some modern pieces. So I've done some stuff with my hands, especially going back to college. But that's the one thing I think I would love to get more involved in, is doing some sculpture, which may relate more to my wildlife artwork, actually.
You mentioned wildlife. We have to take a break now. We come back, we want to go up to your studio, see where all this is created, and we'll do that when we come back. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to This is Jersey. We're here with James Fiorentino, and we're about to enter his studio where he brings his art to life. So this is where you work, huh?
Yeah, it is a pretty cool space, and I always joke around that I can roll out of bed and come right to work. And you know, I really try to keep it like a 9-to-5 job. I wake up, I start checking my email, and you know, come into work when I have an opportunity, and you know, try to make it that 9-to-5 job, because I do have a lot of commission work, which is, you know, a really great thing as an artist. You know, when I get a chance, I do paint things that I love or I want to do or experiment with. But to have so many commissions, you know, and deadlines, you know, you have to really be disciplined to come down here and work all the time.
Can you let our viewers know what parts of this puzzle are all about?
Yeah, I mean, here's an example of a commission piece I'm working on now of this gentleman, and it's going to be presented to his family. So, you know, going beyond sports, I do a lot of family portraits, a lot of portraits of people that are being honored. So all my artwork is done in pencil first, and it's all painted in watercolor, but I think the unique thing is how I paint the watercolor. I'm using tube form and cake form in watercolor, but the way that it's applied on my paper, it's a formula like anything else. You know, it has to be the right paint, right paper, right brushes, and when you figure that stuff out over the years, it becomes your signature look.
Is there an average time it takes you to paint a portrait?
You know, it all depends on the size. So some paintings could take me 2-3 days. Some could take me 5, 6, 7 days. And some big collages or pieces with a lot of detail and are very big could take almost 2 weeks. But I'd say on average, most of these paintings are 3 to 5 days. And I'm going to say, again, if you're painting in that 9 to 5 range, sometimes a little bit less, you know, that's how many hours. So there is a lot of hours into it, but the fact that I paint in watercolor makes it very quick. So you have to be very quick with the way you paint and the way that you put everything down, which makes the whole process go faster. One of the cool events I have this year is the 70th anniversary of Jackie Robinson getting his first professional hit, which happened to take place in Jersey City, New Jersey. It was actually at Roosevelt Stadium, and I'm having an art show at City Hall in Jersey City, April through May, and it's of all different New York baseball paintings that I've done, including some Jackie Robinsons, one of which is the actual hit when he came home, which to me has got to be one of the most historical moments, because you see him shaking the hand of this white ball player. So for that to happen in 1946, 70 years ago on April 18th, to happen in Jersey City that day is pretty historic. So I wanted to be a part of it. It's going to be an amazing event.
So I know you have a big wildlife expo coming up. Tell me about that.
One of the things I've been concentrating on is wildlife in my nature artwork, which started almost 8-9 years ago, but in the last 4 to 5 years, I've been concentrating more on doing paintings of nature, of wildlife, and in this project, concentrating on wildlife in New Jersey, and really showcasing endangered species, threatened species in the state, which, from a show perspective is both educational and great as an art show. I'm doing paintings of animals from all different types of species, from, let's see, turtles, the eastern box turtle, to the little brown bat, the bobcat, to even humpback whales, which most people probably don't realize that we have these whales off the coast of New Jersey. People are going to see these beautiful paintings and say, wow, these things actually are New Jersey, and how can I help? And I've partnered with Conserve Wildlife New Jersey to do this traveling art show. So I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of what we're going to do with it. It's going to start at DNR Greenway Land Trust in Princeton in the fall. It will then go to Studio 7 Art Gallery in Bernardsville, New Jersey, then on to the Great Sal Magundi Club in New York City for a few weeks. We've already got a great amount of places that it's going to begin the show, and probably one of the most proudest types of events and projects I've gotten to work with in a long time.
Now, is this a fundraiser for them?
Yeah, it's both a traveling art show and fundraiser. So we are raising money for Conserve Wildlife, which is great. So in this case, we have sponsors that are involved with the traveling exhibition. We have ways where you can donate directly to Conserve Wildlife, certainly find out how much they do, which is amazing. And certainly by people purchasing some of the stuff, some of the proceeds will benefit Conserve Wildlife. So again, it's like education about the animals, about what Conserve Wildlife does, and certainly about all the artwork that I do.
I know you have a relationship with former Governor Tom Kean. Tell me what you work on with him.
My first opportunity to meet Governor Kean was actually when he was my president. And he was president of Drew University when I went there, went to school there. And we developed a friendship right away with all the artwork I do, especially the sports stuff. And now recently with all the wildlife artwork I do, and being a trustee of the Raptor Trust of New Jersey and his connection with the Raptor Trust, and really caring about the wildlife and the environment in the state of New Jersey. So I asked him if it would be an honor for him, for me to have him do the foreword to the book on this show. So to have Governor Kean involved in any way, and to to be a part of this project like that is amazing.
James, what's next for you? You've been in Yankee Stadium. Your pictures have been on the outside of cheeses. Tell me, what's next?
You know what I always say? I'm lucky every day to wake up and paint these pictures. So honestly, I feel so blessed that every day I wake up and there's this project sitting there for me, more projects, and you never know what kind of cool events coming up, what person you're going to meet. So in all honesty, I'm pretty conservative in that. I'll take what I've been doing already the first 20 years, and if I could just continue that, that would be amazing. But as an artist, you always want to get better. And I still feel learning a lot today. I want to get better every day. I want to go into doing other types of art. I certainly want my watercolor to really become well known for the style that I paint in, and really start doing more everyday life stuff. I'm so inspired by guys like Andrew Wyeth. So my nature artwork, portraits of everyday life, just really expanding that side of my art. And I think as I get older, I get maybe more mature in the way that I want to paint. But certainly the sports will always be there, and the wildlife and nature art's been a big part right now. So if I can continue all that, I'll be very, very happy.
Great. Well, good luck in all that you do. Keep up all the great work.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.